let's now walk through a simple work pattern for using a GitHub. So the assumption is, number one, your GitHub account has been promoted to the educational account. And assumption number two, you have already downloaded the GitHub desktop IDE. If you haven't, please refer to the previous tutorial videos. To really create a repository, I would recommend that you actually try to do it from the GitHub account via the web browser, because it will be much easier to set up your repository to be private, which is crucial. Otherwise, you'll be considered as cheating if you store your lab or project work into the public repository. Okay, let's try to do it, and then I'll show you some conceptual diagram and then do things one step at a time. First of all, let's create a new repository. You can log into your GitHub account, go to github.com, and you can either click on new repository, or you can always go to click on the plus here and then say new repository. And then repository name, just for illustration, let's say hello world. And inside this repository, you can store your software project. It can be a Java project, or it can be a iPhone project as well. Okay, and now the most critical thing is you have to make sure you choose private here rather than public by default. Okay, it has to be private. And then description here, you can give any meaningful description for describing your project. This is my first project on GitHub. Okay, and then you can say initialize this repository with a README. A README file is a very standard way of introducing your project to any other people who actually are interested in your project. But in this case, it can also be a very self-contained documentation for your projects. So you should really keep updating this file as you understand more about your project and give some background or context. And this is something called Git ignore, which we will show you in later tutorial how you can ignore certain folders or certain files in your project. Okay, and then we say create repository. Okay, we do that over here, and then you can see that over here, if you go back to your account, you will see that you do have one single repository that's been created. So let's just go there and make sure. So click on your account and go to your repositories over here. You will see that now you have only one repository, and it is private. It is really important to verify that it's private, and it's called Hello World. And this is the description that we just put in before we create a repository. Okay, and then if you click on that into the project, you can see that this is the readme.md. MD extension here stands for Markdown. So it is a very simple syntax to learn in order to get an HTML format for your README file. I would like to refer you to the syntax or like a cheat sheets for this Markdown syntax over here. You can simply go to this address over here, Markdown cheat sheet. So this is the guide provided by GitHub. So you can just refer to it. It's a very short document here. You can see the various components you can put in your Markdown README file. It can be tables, it can be images, it can be links, or it can be headers. So these are the things you can just explore yourself and try to apply to your lab or your project's README file. Okay, let's go back to the GitHub account. And over here, I would like to just show you some conceptual diagram here and see how we can start making changes to your project. And eventually, we may want to clone a copy of the projects into your computer, and make sure the online copy and also the local copy are somehow kept in sync. So that's the thing I would like to illustrate in this tutorial. But let's go to a conceptual diagram over here. So it looks a little bit complicated, but we'll go one piece at a time. Okay. So what we have just done was, let me just highlight that. So we just created a new repository which is private online, right? You can see this domain over here is online. So that's what we have done. And let's call this version 1 over here. And for version 1, we can already start making changes. Okay, and then whenever we make changes, we can actually decide to commit for that particular change, and then it's going to move from one version to another newer version. Let's just illustrate this first. How can we make a change through the web browser? Okay, let's go back there. And then we can go to the README file. If you click on that, you can see this is the README file. Okay, let me just make a change. To make a change to the README file, I can simply go to edit this file. Okay, and then I can say this is my first, how about this? This is my first change to README file from web. Okay, I'm just identifying the context. So the context of changing your repository can be either from the web browser or from your home computer. Okay, we'll illustrate the latter one a little bit later. Okay, and once you have done this, nothing has been committed yet. So what you got to do is to go to commit changes, and the required field would be you have to actually put some summary of your change. So you can say, for default changes, default summary would just be updated readme.md, but that's a little bit too simple. You want to give, whenever you want to commit a change, you want to give a meaningful message. So this text box, let's give a summary. So I would say added, I'll just say first change, added first change. Okay, and then you can say, actually add a little bit more description here. Added first change from web. Okay, again, this text box over here is a summary. This text box here is a little more detailed description about this particular change. And then for now, we can always say commit directly to the master branch. So there's also a certain feature that's also very interesting about GitHub, which is called branching the feature. So we'll only talk about branching feature in a later video. For this tutorial, you can assume we always have only one single branch, which is called master. Okay, and then we can say commit changes. Okay, so now what we have done is after we have made the changes over here, so what we have done was we actually commit a change. Let me use the different color. Okay, so basically we say commit the changes, and now we have moved to version 2. So the version 2, the README file, is different from version 1. So let's go back and check. Okay, if you go to the readme.md over here, you can see that this is my first project on GitHub. That used to be version 1, right? But in version 2, remember, to move to version 2, we added this line over here. Okay, that's how we make changes from the web online. Okay, what we'd like to illustrate right now is it is also possible to actually, of course, you can still make changes on version 2 and then make it to version 3 if you like. But you can make as many versions as you like, as you actually need for your projects. But now let's illustrate how you can download or clone a copy of your projects onto your home computer or your local desktop. Okay, let's see how we can do that. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're going to use a feature called clone. Okay, so to do this, let's go back there. I will show you how you can do it. Okay, let's go back to your repository. Make sure you click on the home page of the repository, and now you can see this green option over here. Just say clone or download. So over here, the download option is straightforward. It simply means I want to download the current state of my repository as a zip file. So this is useful if you want to email the repository or put your repository in a backup external drive. You can just store the zip file. But now we just want to download a copy of the repository into your desktop, and we can also start making local changes on your desktop. This will be useful if, let's say, you're trying to maybe edit your program, Java program or IFO program using the corresponding programming IDE. It is not so easy to make such changes on web. It's much easier to make changes on your desktop when your desktop stores all kinds of programming IDE programs. Okay. So what we'll do, so there are two ways to clone your projects into your local desktop. So I will show you both ways. Either the easiest way, assuming that you already installed GitHub Desktop, you can simply say open in desktop, and then it's going to open the link by GitHub Desktop, and you can say open link. And now it's going to bring up a panel in your GitHub Desktop, and then it's going to go directly to URL tab, and then you already copy and paste the URL of your private repository. Okay, and then this is one way to go. In case this doesn't really work on your case, so what we can do, we can also do this manually. Let me show you how you can do it. Okay, let's just say cancel. What you could have done was just launch the GitHub Desktop, and then you can just say clone a repository. Okay, you can clone a repository over here, and then you got exactly the same panel brought up. So now all you got to do is go back to the web browser, and then go back to the clone or download option here, and then all you got to do is click on the URL and then say copy. Okay, and go back to your GitHub desktop, and then you can simply just paste that particular URL over here, and then local path. So where would you like to store your local copy of the private repository? So for example, in my case, I simply create on my desktop maybe a folder called 2030, another folder called 3311, doesn't really matter, or I can simply create a folder called workspace. Okay, what about just workspace over here? And then what I can do is I can say choose, and then on my desktop I will choose workspace here and then say open. Okay, you can see basically this is my path for the workspace on my desktop, and also this is the name of the private repository. So which means it is going to create a subfolder called Hello World inside the workspace directory. Okay, and let's say clone. Okay, let's first of all go back to the desktop over here and go into workspace. You can see there's a single subfolder created for the clone copy of the private repository Hello World. If you go inside Hello World, not surprisingly, there's only one single file called readme.md, the Markdown syntax, right? And now let's just open that by any editor. Okay, let me just open that by some editor here. So now you can see this is my, okay, see this was what we did for version 1, and this was what we did for version 2. So that means, so what does that mean? That means when we say clone over here, what we have checked in to our local machine was really the version 2 that was already committed on the web. So we will always check in the latest version of the online repository. Okay, so that's version 2, that's on our current machine. Okay, so now we want to see what we can do to actually make some changes from now. Okay, so now I want to show you to make a change to your repository. You can either make a change online or you can make a change locally. Okay, let me show you how you can make a change online. And for example, let's say over here, if I try to make a change online, version 2 over here, it wouldn't really just be reflected on this local repository automatically. You will have to do something called fetch and pull process, which I'll show you right now. Okay, let's do a change over here. Okay, what I will do is I will go back to my web browser over here, and then again I will go back to my readme file, and then I'll make a change again. Let me say edit this file. Okay, and I would say this is my second change to readme file and from the web. Okay, and then over here I can just add some summary. Okay, I'll just say second change. Okay, second change, and optional here, I'll just ignore that for now, but it's always a good practice for you to put in some extended description for your committed change. So I'll say commit changes over here. Okay, if I go back here to my online to my local copy of the repository that was cloned, if I go into this file again, you will see that this is still the second version. Remember, okay, let me show you one more thing. You can see, go back to the online version over here. Go back to the online version over here. You can say this is my second change to the README file. That means it's already another new version. So that means the online version right now is actually version 3. On the other hand, on our local copy over here, let me just go back to the editor over here. This is still version 2, right? That was still the first change, but we want the second change to be reflected over here. So you can see it's already out of sync, right? Out of sync in the sense that you can see that over here, this is version 3, the latest one, but our local copy still has the version 2. So how can we keep it into sync? Okay, so what we got to do is to really fetch the updates from online. We have to follow this fetch and pull process. Just go back to your GitHub IDE over here. All you gotta do is click on this fetch origin over here, and then it shows you have an option to pull the origin because there was one single update from online that we just did. You have to click on this in order to keep your online and local copies in sync again. Okay, so what we will do is basically that's exactly this process over here. I'm going to use the right color here. we're gonna do the fetch and pull process over here so that we can reach version 3 for us. Okay, so let's try that. So what we'll do is we'll click on this pull the origin. Okay, once we have done this, what we can do is we can go back to the text editor here. You can see this is my second change to readme file, right? You can see it's reflected. Okay, so now our online and local copies are in sync again. Okay, one more thing I want to show you in the IDE, which is also very useful. You can always go to the history over here. You can see that's the initial one we have. That was the version number 1 over here, and added the first change, and this was version number 2, right? And then second change, and this was version number 3. Okay, you can always go to see the history of your software projects, and there's also a way to actually revert back to the previous version, which we'll cover in later videos. For now, you can just say you keep adding changes to your software project. Okay, let's now see the next thing to do. Let's say I want to do, okay, what we just illustrated was you can do your change online and try to pull and fetch into that local copy there. So now we want to do the other way around. Let's say we want to make a change on the local copy over here. And then how can we have the change reflected back to the online copy? How can we do that? Okay, so now let's just go to this file over here. So I would say this is my third change to readme file, and from local computer. Okay, I can even make more actually more comments over here. So remember that was the version 1 that we created initially. After the first change, that was version number 2, and after the second change, it was version number 3, and then after this latest change is going to be version number 4. Okay, and every time if you want to actually say I want to commit this particular change, you have to do an explicit commit. Okay, so now we want to commit a change from the local computer. So let's go back to the IDE for GitHub desktop. What we're gonna do is you can see now the changes over here tells you have one recent change which you may want to commit. Okay, so now similar idea. So we always have to give a summary. So what I would do is this is, let me remind myself, it's the third change. So I would say third change, and it's always a good practice to put some optional extended description here, but I'll leave that to you. Okay, and then we'll say commit to master, and I will say commit. Okay, notice one thing. Okay, I want to explain this. It's really important. Okay, so now when I say okay, what we have just done was we make some changes over here locally, okay, and then we try to commit. And as soon as we commit over here, that means we have now moved to version 4 over here. But I can say for version 4 over here, version 4 was not in sync with the current copy online, which is version 3 over here, right? Okay, so what we gotta do is make sure, let me prove to you that they are really out of sync. Okay. So now let's go back to the text file. Remember, we are now in version 4, right? So that's the latest one we have. However, let's go back to the web browser over here. If you just maybe refresh your page, okay, you can see that we still got just a second change, right? Which is version 3. So you can see the online version got version 3 and the local version got version 4. So now they're out of sync. So how can we somehow reflect the change locally back online? Okay, so the terminology you have to learn is something called push, right? So to go online into local is called pull, as we said before. And to go from local back to online is called push. Okay, so simply just committing your changes locally would not be sufficient. That's the most important thing for you to note when you are using GitHub. When you want to reflect your local committed changes back to the online, you have to do an explicit push. Right? That's exactly what we're going to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, I will just say push, and then we'll make sure version 4 is also reflected online. Okay, let's do that exactly. Okay, let's go back to the IDE locally, and then what we will do is you can see now GitHub IDE desktop give you the option push origin. That's exactly the diagram, the part of the diagram I just show you. Okay, you can simply click on that. That means pushing to the origin. Now it's done. Okay, again you can see locally this is version 4 that we have, And now if you go back to your online repository using the web browser and then simply refresh, okay, you can see that this is the latest version, which is also version 4. Again, our online and local copies are in sync. Okay, so this so far we simply just show you how you can make a change whenever you make a change, either online or locally. Okay, let me just recap what I want to say. Okay, let me recap very quickly for you. So whenever you want to make a change, either online or locally, doesn't matter, you always have to do an explicit commit. You always have to do it. However, if you actually got copies of your repository, both online and also local, this is almost always the case because you really want to work on your projects on your desktop and then push back to the online copy or vice versa always. Okay, so once you have done the committed changes, you should either clone or you should either pull or you should either push. Okay, either pull or push. You do the pull over here to really get the latest version of your changes made online, and you do the push in order to push back the latest updates that you made locally back to online. Okay, pull and push, and then also commit. Okay, so these are the terminology you would like to pick up in order to use the GitHub. So this is a very simple work pattern I'm showing you here. So maybe try with this simple project here. Maybe try to add more files into your local or online copy and try to see how they work. In later tutorials, I will show you how you can specifically create Java projects in Eclipse and see how you can check them in into your repository. Similarly, I will show you how you can create iPhone projects using iPhone Studio and how we can check them in into your repository. Okay, let me just show you one more thing. Now, another question is, let's say I'm done with this project and I want to get rid of it. Okay, so how can you delete a project? Of course, you gotta be very careful if you want to do this, right? Maybe you should always back up a copy of your project before you remove your repository. Okay, I'll show you how you can do it. Okay, what you can do is you can go back to Hello World over here, and then I'll just show you how you can do it on the web. That might be the easiest way. And then you can simply just go to the settings of your project over here. You can see this is Hello World, and this is the settings over here. And then you can just go scroll down a little bit, and you can see there is an option here to say delete this repository. Okay, once you delete, you can just follow the process. I'm just trying to show you. If you say delete, and then it's gonna make sure you actually do some verification before you can delete your project. Okay, I just wouldn't do it. Okay, I'm just showing you. Okay, let's do a very quick recap. For this tutorial over here, we are showing you how you can create a new project, do commits either online or locally, and then sometimes you have to use clone. To really create a local copy, you're gonna use clone. And then to reflect the changes from online into local, you have to say pull. And to reflect the change the other way from local back to online, you have to use push. Okay, follow the later tutorials to see how you can do specific check-in for Java or iPhone projects.